Alright, so here we are inside my computer, and let's go ahead and just dive in and start creating this website. So I've done a little bit of pre-work here, as you're going to see, and I just want to kind of show you what I've done. Nothing too major here, but I went ahead and I created a folder called mini site, and I went ahead and created some pages inside of that folder, and the pages that I created are the pages that we're going to need to make this site work. So looks like we have a total of 8 pages. 5 of those are going to be our actual 5 pages of our website, and then the other 3 are pages that help make bring the site together. So let's talk real quick about the different pages we have here, and I'll go back into the editor. First off, I have our header.php file, and this is going to contain all of our header information, including our document type, our head, our meta tags, all that stuff is going to be in there, as well as our body tag. We'll also have probably our header menu, all the way, anything that's going to be in the header section of the website is going to go up in this header.php file, and we'll walk through all this specifically. And then I created a footer.php file, and in that file is going to be everything that would go in our footer. So our actual physical footer that you're going to see on the site, as well as your closing tags for your body and your HTML and some other stuff. So that's what's going to go in that file. Then we have our sidebar. We're going to put a sidebar on the site, and you don't obviously you don't have to, but we're going to on this site, and that's going to contain just some different sidebar elements. Different pages will probably have different stuff, but again, we're going to walk through that specifically. And then those 3 are kind of the 3 that help bring a page together. Those are going to be included into every page to help make the page actually come together, and we'll talk about that more specifically. And then these last 5 are our actual physical pages. So we're going to have an index page, which is going to be our home page. We're going to have an about page. We're going to have a sales page, we're going to have a thank you page, and we're going to have a contact page. So the idea here is we're simply creating one version of a mini site to kind of give you the basics of how to build a website. And so you're going to have your home page, and then you're going to have your about page, and then you're going to have a sales page, which is going to do kind of the selling for your site. And then you're going to have your thank you page that people would be redirected to after a payment. And then you're going to have a contact page in case people wanted to get a hold of you. Obviously, if you're building a mini site, you may have more pages, you may have less pages, you may structure it a little bit differently and all that. But the focus here really is more on the code and how to bring the code together to actually create the site. I'm not going to dive too much into like sales copy or anything like that. And I'm also, I'm not going to get into whether this is the best structure, is this exactly how we should do it, whatever. You can decide all that for your site. Here, I just want to give you the tools you need as far as the code to be able to actually make that site work for you. So that's what we're going to do here. So first thing we're going to do is we're just going to go ahead and we're going to dive into creating the header. And the first thing that I want to do is there's some stuff at the top, like the doc type and different things like that I just kind of want to get out of the way. Because for the most part, you're probably just going to put the same thing for every site. I know there's maybe some developers out there that are, getting upset at me now for saying that, but practically, you're pretty much going to just put the same thing. It's going to change over time, but I just want to show you, I'm just going to give you the code to put in there. Understanding what it means right now probably isn't that important. As you go along, you're going to want to know what it means, and we'll get into that in some other courses and stuff. But for now, for this course, it's probably best to just give you the code, and that way you have it. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and grab that code, and I'm going to paste it in here, and then we'll talk about it. All right, so I've gone ahead and I've pasted our header code in here, and let's go ahead and go through and just talk about it a little bit and talk about each element. So the very first thing you're going to see here is this Doctype, and what this is a Doctype Declaration, and it basically tells any browser that views that pulls this page, like Firefox, Internet Explorer, whatever, it tells it what kind of document, the document type that this is. And so you can see in here it says it's XHTML 1.0 transitional. And so in case you don't know, what that means is that there's an actual standard out there for this type of document, how the code is supposed to be constructed. And so by having that standard and declaring it, what we can do is we can construct our site according to that standard, and then we can be sure that any browser that views it, that adheres to these standards, which is pretty much all of them now, it will render our page how it's supposed to be rendered according to this standard, because the standard sets how it should be rendered. So that document type, even though it may not seem like it's all that important, it really is, because it's what ensures that your web page gets rendered how you want it to, which is incredibly important, especially if you're going to put all that time into it. You want to make sure that it's cross-browser compatible, and coding according to standard will help you do that. So the next line next couple lines we're not gonna really talk about yet. Then we have our meta tags down here. This one here, maybe something to point out. This is a meta tag that for Internet Explorer that they just came out with, and essentially what that does is it tells the Internet Explorer browser what version of the browser to render this page in. So by setting this to Internet Explorer 8, what we're telling the browsers to render this using Internet Explorer version 8. Now, if you had designed a site in the past for Internet Explorer 7, let's say, you could put Internet Explorer 7 in there, and it would render it according to how that browser would render it. And with Internet Explorer, there is quite a dramatic difference in how they render. The different versions of the browser render a website. So that is something that you may want to pay attention to. All right, we'll kind of skip over some of this. You can see the code here. For the most part, you can just copy it. Then we'll come down here to our title. This is our title tag. This is what shows in the top of the browser. And so I'll drag a browser over here. And up here, this is where the title tag shows, and also right here. So that's what controls what shows there, is this title tag there. Okay, and that also, for like search engines, the actual link for on the search engine that someone would click on, that would be your title tag as well. So that controls that. So things like that. So you want to take some time and think about this title tag. Obviously, you want it to be relevant to your site. But you also want it to be informative for someone who may find your site in a search engine. So there's that. And then we have our links section. And we got essentially two links here. The first one is a link to our shortcut icon. And again, I'll drag a browser over here, and we can look at this. And you can see this icon right here. That is a shortcut icon. And this is where we declare what icon to use for that. And so we'll cover a little bit later how to actually create this icon so that you can have one for your website. So cover that in a little bit, but that's where you would put the link to it to tell the browser where to actually get it. Here is probably one of the most important things that is on here, and that is the link to your style sheet. We're going to create a style sheet, and you're going to actually need to link to that style sheet so that the browser can pull all the information from that style sheet to render your site with all the colors and shapes and all the different stuff, all the actual design elements. So there's that. Then this here is a conditional statement, and essentially what this is saying is if the browser type that is viewing this page is Internet Explorer 7, then we want it to pull in this style sheet. And so we can create a style sheet specifically for Internet Explorer 7, so that if a person using Internet Explorer 7 visits our site, they'll get a version of our site that is more designed for Internet Explorer 7, because there is really such a big difference between Internet Explorer 7 and Internet Explorer 8. Internet Explorer 8 is really the first version of the Internet Explorer where it's very, very close to adhering to these standards that we talked about up here. earlier versions of Internet Explorer really didn't, and rendered web pages completely different than what, say, Firefox or Safari would render them. So there's still people out there using that Internet Explorer 7, and there's, believe it or not, still people using the Internet Explorer 6. But anyway, there's people using this browser, so we do want to make it as compatible as possible. We do want to create a version for them so that they can still see our site and not have elements all over the place. So that's pretty much for our kind of our hidden elements that are inside our head tag, which you can see right here. This is closing right now, and this is where it was opened. Right, so that's kind of everything that we put in there. Some other things that you might put in there, like for example with WordPress, we'll talk about that in some other courses, but that's where you'd put stuff like your stuff for your RSS feed, stuff for your RPC stuff. There'd be lots of other stuff as far as WordPress that would go in there. You also put scripts, like if you have a JavaScript that someone tells you to paste in the head of your or in the header of your web page, it would go in here in between the opening and closing head tag here. So those are some other things that you might put in there. There's all kinds of things that could end up in there, but this is kind of the basic stuff that you need to get going. And then you'll see here, now we're actually getting into the content, or the visible content of our site. And so we opened our body tag, and this is anything inside the body tag is something that's actually going to show up that people are going to see on the site. All this stuff in the head tag is really just kind of hidden. So the first thing we did is we created a div, and a div is basically an HTML element that is it's basically a box. If you know anything about web design in the past, we used to use tables. It's essentially a new version of a table, and that's really not even doing it justice because it's nothing like a table. It's so much better, but that's essentially what it is. It's a box, and as we go forward, you're going to see a little bit more how that all works. And then inside that box, we've created some text here in a H1 tag, and H1, the H stands for heading, and so there's like 6 different, actually you could probably go lower than that, but there's a number of different heading levels that you can go to, and the H1 is the biggest one of all of them, and you're going to see what that looks like as we go forward here. And so then this is just closing our box here, so we always open an element and then we close an element. There are some exceptions to that where we have self-closing elements, but we'll talk about that. And then come down here, we have another box called navigation, and you can see it starts here and it ends here. And then inside that we have what's called an unordered list. That's what UL stands for, unordered list. And then each one of these LIs is a list item. So essentially what we have here is a bulleted list. And then this list, inside each list here is a link. So this is our navigation bar, and it's a list of links. And so we have a link to our home, our about, our sales, our thank you, and our contact us pages. So as you can see, it's really simple, but these are kind of the building blocks of building a website. And you'll see as we go forward, if you end up taking some of the other courses like the WordPress course and things like that, that these are a lot of the elements that you're going to be building over and over and over and over again. So taking the time to master them now and learn exactly how they work is going to save you a ton of time down the road, and you'll be able to envision a website and actually know what code to use to actually create it. So these are very important things to learn. They're the building blocks of web design. So that's our header file. Next, we're going to go on to our footer. So same thing. I'm going to go ahead and paste the code in here for the footer, and then we'll go through and we'll talk about it. All right, so I've gone ahead and pasted in the footer code, as you can see here. And let's walk through it real quick. As you'll see, it's actually fairly simple. We have our box here for our footer that starts and ends here. And then inside of it, we have another unordered list. And essentially, this is going to be a navigation, kind of like a footer links navigation at the bottom that you'll see on a lot of sites. And so we have things like our terms, privacy policy, earning disclaimer, stuff that you might see, again, traditionally at the bottom of a web page in the footer. And also we have our copyright down here. So again, there's really nothing special. It's just an unordered list, and then We have a paragraph tag here. These P tags are called paragraph tags. Again, you can see opening and closing. And we just have some copyright information in here. And then we close our box here. And then two things that you're going to want to add here is you're going to want to add a closing body tag and a closing HTML tag. And we'll go back to our header here, and you'll notice that right here we have an opening HTML tag, and it has some elements assigned to it, but really it's just an opening HTML tag. And then nowhere in here is it closed. It's actually not closed until down here in the footer, because we want to display the whole page, so that's where we would close it. And then again, we have right here, we have our opening body tag, and then again, it's not closed until the footer after all our content has been done. So essentially, all of our content is going to be sandwiched or put in between this header and this footer. That's what all these pages in here are going to be, and of course our sidebar is going to help us a little bit with that as well. So again, going back to our footer, as you can see, it's actually pretty simple. It's just one box. It's got a list of links in it, and it's got one paragraph with copyright information in it. So again, pretty simple. Next, we're going to move on to our sidebar, and our sidebar is we're going to use to display content on the side of the page. It could be used for a number of different things. It could be used for links to different places on the site. If you're used to like a WordPress blog, a lot of times there's things like categories and archives, maybe even a calendar or recent comments. Maybe if it's a membership site, there's a login form, different things like that. All kinds of things that can be put in the sidebar. For ours, we're going to keep it simple. And since we're using a mini site, we're just going to put some testimonials in there and use that as our sidebar. So I'm going to go ahead again, and I'm going to paste the code for that in here, and then we'll talk about it. Alright, so I've gone ahead and pasted in the code for our sidebar, and as you can see here again, we have a div, would have a box here, again simple, with an ID of sidebar, and we're going to talk about that when we get to the actual styling of the website. And then we have an H3 tag. Remember we talked about the heading tags. Well, we have H1, H2, H3, so this is a little bit smaller. And then in here we have actual or individual testimonials. Now you'll notice here in all these in here I use what's called a class. And so there's in CSS you have both IDs and classes, and essentially the difference is if you look here and if you look at all our pages actually, when I use an ID, it only occurs once on an individual page. So I only use it once, this ID once in this footer. And I only use the ID for the header once, and I only use the ID for the navigation once on this page. If you come over here, and the same for the sidebar right here. But if you look at the class, you'll notice I'm using these same classes multiple times on the same page. And so difference between an ID and a class is really an ID points to a specific box within an individual page and no other box on that page has the same name. And so it allows you to get real specific about which element you're styling using CSS. Whereas a class, this is when you have multiple elements with the same, you want to give the same attributes to. So we're going to have multiple testimonial boxes, and we want all the testimonials to have the same style. So instead of naming this like testimonial 1, testimonial title 1, body 1, meta 1, and then this 2, 2, 2, 2, we can just give them all a class and construct it the same way and just change the actual wording that's within it, and change the actual wording that's within it, and all of the testimonials will show up the same as far as their style, but they'll have different content in them. So that's when you would use a class, and classes are very powerful. There's other ways that you can use classes that we'll talk about as we go along here, but the main thing is to know is that if you want multiple elements on a single page to have kind of the same style, then you would want to use a class for that. So if you come in here, you notice we have this div class called testimonial, and then we have a paragraph tag, and actually have a couple of them in a row, and each one has a little bit different class. We have our testimonial title, our testimonial body, and our testimonial meta. And so having these different classes will allow us to style each set of content here a little bit differently. So we can style our title, probably make it a little bit bolder, a little bit bigger, easier to read. Then we have our body, probably a little bit smaller because there's more content to it. Then we have our meta here, probably kind of in between those two, depending on how you want to style it. But by structuring it this way, you can come to each individual element here and style it precisely how you want to. And then by using the same classes, all you got to do is change the content in here, as you see that I've done, and you can have all your testimonials have the exact same style to keep it consistent, but they'll have this different content in here. So that's kind of how to structure, and most of your the way you structure text and paragraph elements is going to look something similar to this. You're going to have probably going to have a div, a box that's all inside of. You're going to have some paragraph tags for like the title. You may use a header tag like this depending on how you're structuring it for different titles. In this case, I went with a paragraph tag. And then so for your title, you'll have kind of a title element. You probably have a body that has the bulk of your content. Like if you're writing a blog, and when we get into designing WordPress themes and some of the other courses, this will be like an H tag. This will be a paragraph tag, and this is where the bulk of all your content will go. And then you have some kind of meta, maybe a signature or other elements at the bottom here. But this is pretty much how you're going to structure the majority of your text. So that's a little bit about structuring text in our sidebar here, and we're just going to go ahead and save this. Now we've kind of got the main elements of our site put together. We have our header, we have our footer, and we have our sidebar. And so the next thing that we're going to do is we're actually going to start to include all of this into these individual pages here using PHP. And what this is going to allow us to do is it's going to allow us to, in all these pages, we're going to paste pretty much the same code except change a few little things, and then it's going to pull the information from these 3 pages into these pages. Okay, and this will make a little bit more sense when we actually get in there and do it. And what that allows us to do is if we have, let's say we have 100 pages on our site, and we coded each one of those pages top to bottom, header to footer on its own. If we wanted to change the style of our site site-wide, we'd have to go into each one of those 100 individual pages and change all of that code. Now, with the way we're doing it here, since we're including these files that we created, the header, the footer, and the sidebar, into these pages, if we want to change it, say we have 100 pages on our site, if we want to change the style of our site, all we have to do is come into these 3 pages and change those. And since they're included into all of the other pages on our site, our entire site will change just by changing these 3 files. The big advantage of doing it this way is it makes making site-wide changes a lot easier. We can edit just a couple files and our entire site is changed. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to paste in the code that we need to include our header and our footer and our sidebar into we're going to start with our index page here. And I'm going to paste that code and then we will talk about it. All right, so I've gone ahead and pasted in our include code for our index page, and let's go ahead and just walk through this a little bit. Okay, so here is the actual include, and this is what's called a PHP include. Okay, so let's just talk about the syntax first just a little bit here. All PHP pretty much starts with this little bit right here, this less than sign, question mark, and then PHP, and then it ends with question mark and a greater than sign. So that's pretty much how you begin and end every PHP statement that you're going to make. Then inside of these tags is where you do your actual PHP functions and declarations and all the different things that you do. And so one of those functions is called an include. And what this include does is it'll essentially, this header.php file, it'll take all the content that's in here and it will print it right here. So when we go to view this web page, it'll be as if this code was printed right here. We had actually typed it right here. But since we're including it like this, like I said before, it's referencing the same file. We can paste it in all these pages, and then if we want to change this look of the site, we change this one page and it changes in all of these pages across our site. So that's an include, and you can see we've done an include for the header, we've done an include for the sidebar, and we've done an include for the footer. So we've included all of these files into our page here. So if you look at our the construction of our page, we have essentially our header right here, and that has our header. It starts with our body tag. It'll have all this information up here. Then it'll start with our body tag, and then we have our header, we have our navigation, and then we'll go into our content that's specific to this page. So we have a content, divide ID equals content, divide equals content left. We have an H2 tag, which is a heading tag, and this is the name of this individual page. This is the text for this individual page. And then this closes the content left. This includes our sidebar. This closes the content, and then this includes our footer. And so essentially, if you look at it in boxes, we have our top box, we have our content box, and inside our content box, we have a left and a right side. We have our main content in the left side. We have our sidebar content kind of on the right side is where we're going to put it. Then we close our content section, and then we have our footer box. And so when we get up, we're going to upload this. We're going to talk a little bit more about the style sheet. Then we're going to upload this, and we're going to take a look at it, and this will make a lot more sense. But this is how you do the includes. It's called a PHP include, and it makes your life a whole heck of a lot easier when it comes to designing web pages. All right, so what we're going to do now is we're going to go ahead and construct our style sheet. And I'm going to actually do this here in front of you so we can kind of be a little bit easier, and I think it'll be a better learning experience for you to actually see us construct it instead of me just pasting the code. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a new file, and we're going to just put some text in here so we can save it and call it style.css. Alright, so this is our style sheet, and what we're going to do really is just kind of start from the top and work our way through our page and put in our different elements. So we'll go to the header, and the first thing we have is the body. So we'll go back to our style sheet, and we'll just type in body. And the way the syntax works with CSS is for elements like the body, for that we're going to apply site-wide, you're not going to put anything in front of them like a dot or a pound sign or anything. And then you're just going to type the name of the element. So here it's the body, and then you're going to have an opening curly bracket and a closing curly bracket. And all the attributes you apply to this element are going to go inside these brackets. Okay, so we have our body. Next thing we have down is our header, which is an ID. Okay, so we need to pay attention to that. When it's an ID, we're going to go and put a pound sign in front of it. All right, and same thing. And then we've got our navigation here. And then we have some kind of sub elements. So we're going to talk about nested elements for just a second. When you have an element like this div right here, and inside of it you have other elements, these elements inside are called nested elements. So the UL is nested inside of the navigation div, or the unordered list. Each list item is nested inside of the unordered list as a whole, and then each link is nested inside of the list item. Okay, so those are, when we talk about nested elements, that's what we're talking about. Now when you're referencing nested elements in a style sheet, you start with the top element that you want to reference, and you kind of work your way down. So if we want to reference the, let's say, the unordered list here, then we would write our code like this. We would start with the navigation UL. All right, so what this does is it references this specific ordered list within the navigation div. Now, if you had a UL up here inside the header, this wouldn't reference that because it's only referencing all of the unordered lists inside of the header. Now, to go even further down, let's say you wanted to reference a list item. Then you're going to go navigation UL LI. Okay, just like that, and that'll reference each individual list item. And then inside those list items are links. So UL LI A. Right? So that would reference all the way down navigation, unordered list, list item, the links inside of these specific list of this specific list. So again, if you had a link inside here, it would not the attributes that you apply here wouldn't apply to this because it's not referencing it, that link or those links that would be up here. Okay, so that's how you work with nested elements. Okay, so I'm going to kind of just split these out a little bit so we can see them a little bit better. All right, so we've gone through our header and we've done everything there. Let's go ahead and go to the next page is actually going to be our index page because this is going to be the next part. So let's go, the next thing we have is our content and content left div. Okay, so we're going to go content and content left. And then we have, and inside that page we have an H2. So we're going to go content left H2. And if we come back to this page, the last thing that we have are these paragraph tags. So we're going to go content left paragraph. Okay. All right, so that's everything from our index page. Now let's go to our sidebar. In our sidebar, we have our sidebar ID. So we go sidebar. And then we have our H3. So we're going to go sidebar H3. All right. And now if we go back to our sidebar, this is where we get into our classes. And so if we were to not put these classes on here and we wanted to reference this paragraph here, we would have to put sidebar P just like we did up here with the content left P, right? But since we've given it a class, since we've given these a class, we can just reference the class now. Okay, so if we want to reference this div right here, we can just reference the class of testimonial. And to do that, we would come back down here and we put a dot for the class. And again, the curly brackets. So when you're doing IDs, it's the pound sign. When you're doing classes, it's a dot. Okay, and so then we can come back to our sidebar and we can look at all the classes we have. We have testimonial, we have testimonial title, testimonial body, and testimonial meta. All right, so we'll just come back here, testimonial title, testimonial body, and testimonial meta. And you'll notice that I spelled it wrong here. Okay. And those are our classes, and those reference these individual elements in here. And again, we talked about classes earlier, so you kind of understand a little bit more about those. Okay, and then let's go to our footer. In our footer, we have our footer div, and then we have a list, and then we have a paragraph. Okay, so if we're going to type this out, we have footer, we have footer UL, we have footer UL LI, we have footer UL LIA, and then we have footer P. Okay, go to our footer. That's pretty much all our elements. So those are the main elements that we have, the main building blocks that we have for our site. When you build a site, I highly suggest you go through and do it like this. You kind of build the basic structure, then you go through and you build your style sheet with that basic structure. It helps keep things a lot more organized, helps speed along your design and help you understand where you're at. So I highly suggest doing that. So now we've got these all laid out, we can actually start to add some style to them. So with the body, the first thing I'm going to do is most browsers have what's called a browser padding. And what that is it's just pixels that go around the browser that if you don't remove them, they're going to be there and they're going to kind of throw things off. So first thing I like to do is just go in here and remove that padding. And get rid of it so we don't have it there anymore. Okay, so we have that. Let's go ahead and build our header. And just to talk about this a little bit, it's really as simple as it looks. This is the body element, and so you're declaring that it has a margin of 0 and a padding of 0. So you're saying that the padding around that element is, or inside that element is 0, and any margin around it is 0. Okay, and that'll make a little bit more sense here when we get into some of these other elements. With the header, we're going to go with a minimum height of, let's say, 120 pixels for now. Okay, so it needs to be at least that. We're going to do a background color, and we'll just make it black. Okay, and so this is the background, and this is just a hexadecimal color. Pretty much you can just go on and Google hexadecimal color, and it'll show you a bunch of colors, and it'll give you the hexadecimal number for it, and you come in here and you put it in, and it'll show up that color. So it's really as simple as that. Black happens to be 000. So it's really that simple. Since we're going to be using black as our background, I'm going to go ahead and do and we'll actually want to go in and look at our header, and we have an H1, so we're going to do header H1, and I'm maybe give it a color of white, and FFF happens to be white. And what that's going to do, so now we have a black background with white text. Okay, so that's really all I'm doing. And let's see, let's go into our navigation, and we're going to make it black as well. Min height, let's start with that. We'll make 35 pixels, and we'll make the background black. All right, now I'm going to skip over the rest of these navigation elements for now. Looks like I got a typo here. Okay, and let's go to the content. Okay, so content, we're going to do a width of 1,000 pixels, and we're going to give it a margin of 0 auto. Okay, and I'll explain what that, or actually I'll just show you what that does here in a second. And let's go to the content left. Let's give this a width of 650 pixels and a float left. We'll leave those alone for right now. Come to our sidebar, and we'll give it a width of 350 pixels and a float left. We'll leave our testimonials alone. Our footer, let's go, min height is 150 pixels, go with a background of black. And then let's go here and let's make the color, and we'll make it white. And with our links here, we'll do the same thing. And actually, if we come up here, we'll make our links here white as well. That way we can see them. Okay, so that's kind of some basic stuff. Now, what I'm going to do, just to, you'll be able to see this, you'll be able to see that. Our content, let's put a border around it so we can see it. Actually, we have content in there, so we should be able to see it. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to go ahead and upload this to our site, and then we'll take a look at it, and we'll be able to see what some of this stuff actually does and how some of these elements come together, and it's going to start coming together a lot more for you. So I'm going to do that now, and then we'll take a look. All right, so I want to go ahead and show you this. The first time you do this, this is probably what's going to happen with your site, okay? And the reason I'm showing you this is because pretty much every time when you code something from the start, you're going to have typos. You've seen how many typos that I already had in just a little bit that we've done. So you're going to have typos. You're going to have, you know, semicolons in the wrong spot, or colons instead of semicolon. You're going to have something, or you're going to, you know, forget to add in a certain attribute here or there. You're going to have something that's going to throw it off, okay? And it's going to look weird. It's going to look strange. It's not going to look how you think it's going to look. So the reason I'm showing you this is because when that happens, I don't want you to get discouraged. I've built probably over 100 websites, and every time I do it, it's still, this is what happens when I first code something, okay? When it happens, you just go back through your code, you find the typos, you find what you missed, and you fix it, okay? So I don't want you to get discouraged. It happens to all of us. It happens pretty much every time you build a site. There's so much code that it's hard to just remember everything and get everything right off the bat. So the thing about building a website is persistence. And so yeah, I just wanted to show you this. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go back into my code, and I'm going to find out what I missed. I'm going to find out, you know, why things are showing up the way they are, and I'm going to fix those, and then we'll talk about those. Okay, so I'm going to do that now, and then we'll talk about it. Okay, so the first big thing you'll notice is that now we have our footer, so it actually shows up down at the bottom here. And what did that is, if we go to this content and we do an overflow auto, what that does is, if we come back over here, when we talk about nested divs, we have a content div, and then nested inside of that, we have a content left div. Well, all our content is inside that content left div, and when that content is what is stretching this page to be the length that it is. And when you have a nested div, the parent div, in this case our content div, it doesn't automatically stretch to fit. You have to tell it to stretch to fit the content. Now, the div that the content is in will automatically stretch, but if there's any on the outside of it. So to kind of explain this, if we come here, this would be our parent div. And you notice right underneath here, there's nothing except this second div. And all of our content is inside of this content left div, okay? So, and it's the same for the sidebar really, because if you come to the sidebar, it's a div here too. So it's just like there's another div right here. So all the content is inside two of these divs. None of it's actually inside this content div. So this content div won't automatically stretch to fit the content. So that was what was causing our footer to write up. By doing the overflow auto, that tells it to go ahead and stretch to fit to the nested divs inside of it. So you need to do that, and that's what allows our site, our footer, to now show up where it's supposed to. All right, and so the second thing you'll notice is that right here we have content, we have a misspelling. We have content left instead of content. So we add a T, and I'll save that, and I'll upload it. And then we'll go back to our site, refresh, and now we have our main content floating to the left and our testimonials floating right up alongside it. Okay, so now if you look at the rest of the site, believe it or not, the rest of the site is actually showing up pretty much about how we told it to. Okay, so it looks like everything so far is how it should be. Obviously this isn't how we want it, but it is showing up how we told it to. So I'm going to go back through this and I'm going to do a little bit more editing, and then I'm going to walk you through what I did. Alright, so now you can see we have our site looking probably a little bit more like what we're thinking. Still got a little bit of work to do here, but we now have our title and our menu bar and our footer nav and our copyright all within the boundary of kind of in line with our content section here, which is more like what you're used to seeing. So what we're going to do now, and I'm going to show you exactly how I did that. So what I did is I created a class called wrapper, and with that class I gave it a width of 1000 pixels, which is the width of our content area, and then I gave it a margin of 0, auto 0, and what that essentially does is it centers that div. So you have to give it a width, and then you give it this margin and it will center it. And if we come back to our page over here, this wrapper div actually will wraps right in here, and it wraps all the way around our navigation here, it wraps around our title here, and it wraps around our footer elements down here as well. And so that's what allows those to move over. And if we come back to our site here, you'll see in the header I put divide class equals wrapper, and I close that wrapper right here, and I also did the same thing for our logo, opened and closed it. And if we come to our footer, again same thing, open and close it right here. So that's what allows our elements to be a little more centered, like how we're thinking. So the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to talk about our navigation bars, because that's one of the big things that you're going to run into and a lot of people want to know how to do and struggle with, and it's actually really simple once you learn how to do it. So I'm going to show you how to do a navigation bar and set it up so that it shows exactly how you want it to. Alright, so if you look here, we'll talk about the first part of creating this menu or navigation bar. So you'll notice that our links now here are all in a line as opposed to being a list top to bottom. So the first things that you're gonna want to do when you create a navigation bar is you're going to want to set the margin to 0, the padding to 0, and the list style type to none. What that does is it gets rid of the bullets, it gets rid of the padding and the margin that were there to accommodate those bullets. And then you want to put it to display in line. That's what causes it to display side to side as opposed to top to bottom. So those are pretty much, you'll notice that I did that with both of our navigation. Here's our footer nav, and it's got pretty like the exact same thing done to it. So those things are pretty much mandatory when you're going to create some kind of menu bar, and that's the first step that you're going to want to take. And the next thing that you're going to want to do is you're going to want to start to create some spacing in here. Also, I like to put a border around my nav bar just so I can see kind of where it is. Now, if you're using different colors, obviously I'm using black for both so it doesn't show up. If you're using different colors, you're going to be able to see it right away, so that won't be as big of a deal. But for this, I'm going to go ahead and put a white border around it so that we can see where it actually is. And another thing that I'm going to do is I'm actually going to increase the size. I'm going to go up to 40 pixels. And it just seems a little small to me for what we're doing here. So, and these are kind of some of the decisions that you'll make as you go. And see, that looks a little bit better to me. So that kind of gets our links in line, gets us some spacing, gets us so we can see kind of where things are, and we can continue to set up from there. The next thing I like to do is go ahead and get this kind of centered top to bottom, and how you're going to do that, it kind of depends on how you construct it, but for the way we constructed it, you're going to go into the navigation UL, and you're going to put a padding on the top. So with the padding in the margin, how it works is when you declare, you're declaring, you got four sides. You got top, bottom, you got top right, bottom left. Okay, and that's kind of how these numbers work. So this is the top setting, this is the right setting, this is the bottom setting, and this is the left setting. So if we go back, then around this entire element here, you have your top, you have your right, you have your bottom, and you have your left. So by setting the top to 8 pixels, it causes this to drop down and gets it about in the center here. So that's the next thing I like to do, is get this about in the center, so it looks like it's centered there. Alright, so now you can see I've gone ahead and I've kind of taken this all the way full force. So you can see that when we've got our links up here, they're spaced out, and when we hover over them, the background changes and also the color of the text changes as well, so that we can let our users know that which link that they're hovering over, and they can go ahead and just click on it. So that's one of the effects that a lot of people want to do with their navigation bar, and so here's how to do it. Alright, so here's our navigation. I went ahead and I changed, if you come in here, I gave this a class of Nav Bar, and the reason was because it was giving me a little bit of issues because I had this wrapper in between the navigation and the Nav Bar. So when I was using navigation ULLI, it was giving me a little bit of issues. So I just went ahead and gave this a class, and then I just referenced that class directly. Okay, so here's what we did here. First off, I gave the navigation div, which is the div that stretches all the way across all this over here. I gave it a height of 40 like we did before. Background is black. I gave it the border so we could see, and then I gave it an overflow of hidden. Okay, and that'll come into play here in a second. Then for the nav bar, this is the unordered list as a whole. I gave it a margin of 9 pixels on the top and 0 everywhere else. And what that does is that's what brings it down and centers it horizontally. And of course, you got to play with that to get it so it's just exactly right, the right amount down, so that's in the center there. But you have pixel precision control over it, so you can just kind of play with it till you get it right. List style type none, and then the padding none, like we had talked about before. That gets rid of all the stuff that was there to accommodate the bullets and gets rid of the bullets themselves. We did the display inline, a margin of 0 for the LI, and then if we come into the Nav Bar LIA and the Nav Bar LIA hover, this is where most of the action as far as this hover action here happens. Okay, so there's a couple things to keep in mind here. First off, we have the color of our link, which is white. We changed the text decoration to none. That gets rid of the underline. So if you want to keep it, you would just get rid of that. Then we created a padding of 12 pixels, and that padding is 12 pixels all the way around. And that's important to have there so that your links are spaced out just how they are when they get hovered over. To give you an example here, if I were to go like this and I were to get rid of this padding and we were to upload this, now these would be all spaced together, but when I hovered, they would spread apart like that. And that's because the padding for the LIA is different from the LIA hover. Okay, so we want to make sure that these two paddings right here are exactly the same. Now you can make these pretty much whatever you want because we have this overflow hidden on over here. So what that means is, let's go ahead and save this, and we'll go ahead and re-upload it so we're back to where we started. What that means is when we hover over, the padding that we've put around it actually probably takes this gray color that we have here beyond the border of this navigation. But because we put the overflow, right, the overflow of the contents inside to hidden, it just automatically hides it. So it fits it just right perfect to this box. So that's a really easy way to do it, is just to make this padding big enough where you know it'll go over the edges, and then put an overflow hidden on this navigation element. and that'll make it so it just when you hover over that color fits just perfect in there. Okay, so text decoration none, the padding 12, and then for the hover, all we did is we just change a little bit how the colors work. So here we have a black background with white text. Here we made kind of a light gray background with black text. And then again, we put the padding the same as in just the link element by itself. So these two paddings are exactly the same. And so when we hover over, you can see we have black with white text. When we hover, now it turns to gray with black text, just as we specify. So that's how to do a navigation bar, and that's how to do it in a way where you know, a lot of people are looking to do and don't necessarily know how to do. It's really cool for your site visitors. They really appreciate it. Makes you look professional. Makes you look like you know what you're doing. Believe it or not, small things like that do make a difference. So that's how to create the navigation bar. Now we're going to come down here and we're going to do this one a little bit too. I'm going to go through this one a little bit quicker since we've gone through this up here, and show you kind of a little bit different way that we can do this down here. All right, so now if we look at our site down here, we can see we've got our footer links here. We've got them separated nice and even. We've got them centered. We've got our copyright centered here, and we've got a nice little kind of padding around our footer here as well. So I'm going to come in here and show you what I did. First thing I did is I put a padding of 15 pixels on the footer, and that is what creates this space right here between the links and the top of the footer. Again, these are just like before. It's got a width of 535 pixels and a margin of 0 in auto. So essentially what that does is we get the width of this element, which is about 535 pixels, and we make it the element just that wide. So now there's this UL is only this wide, and then we center it. It's important that you get that width, okay? And so you have to play with it a little bit to get the right width, but it's important that you get that, otherwise it won't center. And then you put a margin of 0 in auto, which is basically centering it, and that's what puts it in the center, just like this. And then if we go to, we have our display in line, and we have our color is white, and we have a padding then on the links of 0 on the top and then 15 on the right. And actually when you write 2 like this, what the computer does, or what the browser does, is assumes that you write it out like this. So it actually assumes all 4, but you just don't have to write them out. So when you write it like this, it puts a padding on the top of 0, a padding on the right of 15, a padding on the bottom of 0, and a padding on the left of 15. So if we go back to our site, then we can actually see that here, and that's what creates the spacing in between here. And then I went ahead and I left the underline on there. So now you can kind of see that our site looks like a lot of sites that you see out there in a basic sense. You see the kind of the header up here. You can see the nav bar. You can see the main content section. You can see the sidebar. You can see the footer links and the copyright. And so what we've really just done is created a site that is almost is the basic building blocks essentially of any website that's out there. Now you can do a couple different things, and in some other videos for this course I'm going to show you a couple different ways that you could go ahead and do this. But again, you have the basic building blocks that you need to build a website. So now I'm going to show you how you can kind of extrapolate this out into other pages and create the rest of your pages for your site here. All right, so now we've got kind of the basic elements of our site built. Now I'm going to show you how you can kind of extrapolate this out into your other pages and how easy it is to create new pages when you build a site this way. So we're in our index page here that we had created, and we can just go ahead and come in here. We can copy this code and we can go into, say, our about page. We can paste that code. Now all we have to do is change the specific content for this page. So we'll change the title to about, and then we can come in here and we can change this text, and we'll just say, we'll just put this is our about page. okay? And we'll save that page. And we can do that for every single page that we have here. So for our sales page, we do that, and we just change this to sales, and we change this to this is our sales page, and we copy this, we paste, get rid of that. This is our thank you page, our contact page, and then we have our style sheet. So now we've just in a matter of minutes created 5 pages, and the thing about it is all you have to do is change the content that's specific to this page. So I'm going to come back over here. I'm just going to grab all these pages. I'm going to re-upload everything over top of what we've already got up there. That way we have all our brand new pages with all our code back in them, and we can refresh our home page. Okay, and it's going to look the same. Now if we go to our about page, we can see we have our about page. This is our about page, and our sales, and our thank you page, and our contact us page, and you can see everything else remains exactly the same except the specific content for that page. Now if you know anything about, say, WordPress themes or anything, you know that you can see the power behind this. Once you know how to do this, what you've learned just in this video, you have the basic understanding you need to be able to create themes, to be able to create templates for all different kinds of sites, because they all operate off this basic structure, something very, very similar. WordPress itself operates off a structure pretty much identical to this. So you'll be able to start, you'll have an understanding of how to create WordPress themes. Okay, so this is very, very powerful in doing this. And now if we come back to, say, our style sheet, and first off let's get rid of this border just because it's annoying me, and let's say we want to change the color of our header to, I don't know, let's make it a gray, and we'll go with, oops, got an extra R in there, right? And so then we're going to change this color to black. Okay, so we changed what, 5 seconds worth of code, right? We save that one file, we go to our style sheet, we upload it, and we simply refresh, and now it's changed. And it's not only changed, it's changed on all of our pages, okay, across our entire site. That is the power of building your sites like this. You can change the entire look and feel of your site in a matter of minutes, as opposed to having to go into each page and edit it. So now you've got the basic building blocks. We've got our basic kind of template built for our site. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a couple of different videos where we build upon this and extrapolate it all the way out to a fully designed, nice looking website with all the bells and whistles. Okay, and I'll show you a couple different ways that you could take, again, this basic structure and you could build it out so that you can kind of start to see the power of knowing just these basic fundamentals that you've learned here in this video, learning how to structure your site this way, learning how to use PHP includes, learning how to do some of the basic simple things with CSS and HTML. That's all that people who build themes and different things like that, that's all, at the foundation, that's really all they know. Now, you'll find some who are typically more coding experts, like they'll know PHP or JavaScript. I tend to be a guy who likes PHP and know a little bit more about PHP. You'll find other people who know about like JavaScript, and then you'll also find other people who are kind of design guys who are really good with Photoshop and things like that. And so you might find as you go forward, you kind of find your niche where maybe you're better with Photoshop, you like using Photoshop, and you'll be kind of more of a design type person. Or maybe you'll be more of a code type person where you get into code and you really like that. Or maybe even more specific than that, you'll find people who are just kind of WordPress people where they like the WordPress functionality, they know how it works, they've learned some of the functions, and so they're really good at building WordPress themes, or Joomla or Mambo or Dolphin Community Builder or whatever. So, but at the core, it's all based off the fundamentals that you've learned here. So I'm going to show you a couple different ways that you could go ahead and put this site together based off what I've showed you here. And I think as I do that, it's going to become a lot more clear just the power of what you've learned in this video here. So those courses or those videos are available inside this course. Go ahead and check those out, and you can find a couple different ways to make this site work for you. So appreciate you watching. Hopefully it was helpful. I look forward to your comments, your suggestions, your feedback. Let me know what questions you have, and we can kind of build this out from there. So again, I appreciate you watching, and I'll talk to you again soon.